Hello and welcome to another episode of A Journey in Boots from Trauma to Triumph. I'm your co-host, Dorothy Odell. I am the founder and owner of Unstoppable Overcomers Productions, and I have the distinct pleasure of bringing you attention over here to the amazing Dr. Jay Royster. Dr. Jay, tell us the world a little bit about you.
So I'm Dr. Jay Royster. I am a clinical mental health therapist who specializes in trauma. Healing trauma, not like just in, creating trauma. But I am the CEO and owner, president, whatever you want to call me, of Semper Modus. It is a private practice. We are in 11 states, and we have many, many providers specializing in particular issues. We do pretty much everything Zoom, except for the kiddos. They get to be seen face to face. So we have a very special show tonight, and I'm going to let Miss Dorothy from Canada introduce Mr. Man here.
All right, I'll do this one-handed. All right, so I have the distinct pleasure of bringing to the screen Chaplain Michael Saxe. Is he up? Hold on. Sorry, I'm doing this.
Pull him.
There we go. Woohoo! All right. Mr. Saxe is a retired detective and 911 responder. Sustained serious injuries in the line of duty, resulting in a permanent disability. He was awarded the Purple Heart by the American Police Hall of Fame, and as an approved instructor of the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, Michael serves as a lead chaplain and crisis response K9 handler for the Clermont Police Department. And shout out to the Clermont Police Department. Woo, 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 woo. All right.
Well, I'll be sending this to Broadway, I assure you.
All right.
Oh, Paula was on here as well.
Oh,
yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. We got Phil on here. We dragged him.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He won a bunch of awards. He's all over LinkedIn right now. So that's
he sure
awesome.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. He is a hot commodity. But we're here to talk about the amazing Chaplain Saxe. So I know, Dr. J, you've been chomping at the bit, and you would not let me talk about anything on his bio in the green room. So you take it away, ma'am.
Well, we need your genuine response to what he has to say, because Mr. Michael here has a pretty phenomenal story, and I really want him to tell it in his way. So we talk on this podcast about where you were, where you are, and where you're going. And I know that you were one of the police officers that responded to 9/11. And I do want you to share a little bit about that if you want to, if you're comfortable. But why police?
So when I started my career, I started out as a volunteer firefighter. And that was
Let's go back a little before that. Why did you want to serve?
I always had a calling to serve. I believe it or not, when I was really little, we pulled up next to a police car, and those cops bleeped their siren and waved, and that started a drive within me, just about law enforcement. And then I went on a couple of different excursions with my school to firehouses, and was really intrigued by the fire services, police services, EMS. So apparently I wanted to try each one. So I started with fire, and but the problem with the fire department in Long Island at the time was there were no benefits. So if you got hurt, you had a big problem. And I started in Oceanside Rescue and Elmont Truck 2. And Elmont Truck 2 is like a real working firehouse. It was
Where is that?
Elmont, New York. It's very close to the city of New York. It's Queens. Okay. It's like right on the border of Queens.
Okay.
And we had some fires that were real fires, working fires. And it was a realization that I could get hurt real bad, and my family might have a problem. Now they've fixed some of those problems since then, but so I went to New York City EMS after that, and that was a paid position, and I was getting shot at in Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, Brooklyn. I was 18 years old, and so 18 to 20, I was working New York City EMS, and I just carrying a lot of
that
bags.
for helping. You have to expand on that, sir.
What was it? Yeah. Well, it was once told me that you want to be a firefighter if when you look at a house fire, you want to bust in a door and go save somebody. You want to be a cop if when you're driving behind a vehicle and there's guys with guns in the vehicle that kick a door open on a van, your instinct isn't to pull away from the vehicle. Your instinct is to chase it. I had all those things. I wanted to get in the chases. I wanted to go into the fires. I wanted to help save people. So it was about some excitement side of it. It was because I was a kid at the time too. And it was also about the serving side of it, where my mother was a nurse. My brother was a police officer before me and a firefighter before me. And I had seen this stuff. My dad was in the military. So seeing all that just created, like, I wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to go to college at the time. I wanted to work and mm-hmm. get on streets. But when I was working EMS, I started realizing that, and this is before the merger to the fire department. We were working for the Health and Hospitals Corporation in New York. We weren't paid as well as we should have been, and we were carrying a lot of gear all the time. And I would watch the officers walk in, and they had their gun belts on, not carrying gear, and looked like they were having a lot of fun doing what they were doing. And I was like, I really want to do that. I don't want to do what I'm doing, even though I love working the green and white because it's the colors we wore.
Right.
And shout out to those guys and women. But it was a little too much and a little, the pay wasn't enough. So at 20 years of age, I went into the police department, and I was the very earliest you could get hired in the New York City Police Department. So you had to graduate the academy at 21 because that's when you could carry a gun.
Okay.
But that's literally when I graduated the academy at 21. So I was a kid. I really didn't know better. And the flip side of the excitement, as I learned later in my career, is you can get really hurt doing this stuff. Mm-hmm. And you can get exposed to a lot of trauma and different things. And it becomes very real all of a sudden. And that side of it was coming out little by little in fire and in EMS. And then in the PD, I was having these calls that were affecting me. Only back in the day, things were very different, where I didn't really understand what PTSD was. I didn't understand that there could be assistance out there to help us through PTSD. We didn't have any training for it. Like we learn now all sorts of things about PTSD and what to do with trauma. But back in the day, the phrases were leave it in your locker. You don't go home and talk about it. Right. So it was a great career at first. And it was always an enjoyable career. But October 31st of 93, it took a turn. Actually, February of 93, it took its first turn. I was 23 years old, and I was working patrol, and I got in a shooting. They tell you all sorts of things about if you're going to get in a shooting. And this is the only time I've ever discharged my weapon in the line of duty besides being at the range. I fired one shot at this shooting. But to this day, that shooting weighs heavy on me. We had responded to a call for backing up another officer. It was a 2-story building, and they had gone on a dispute. And as they were walking away, I don't know what I'm quite allowed to say on the air here.
Whatever you want.
Okay, so as they were walking away, I won't excuse the white line, but he basically all of a sudden slammed the window open. It was 1:30 in the morning. He said, "It's a good day to die, mother effers." Mm-hmm. And he started shooting at them. and they returned fire. And then we were called to back them up. They ended up getting pinned. And as we were back up, you would think things would go nice and smooth, and they were. They went pretty smooth. It was an extended scene, but we ended up getting pinned behind the car. They got to safety, and then we couldn't get out really without being exposed. And as time went on, basically he was going to take a shot at us, and he exposed his weapon. And I took a shot at him, and he went down. I'm not sure if my bullet hit him or not. I think it did, because he ended up having a bullet wound in the center of his head. But he lived. He was fine. He just had we were using soft tip 38s, so he just had a line that went around his skull and came out the back. I mean, and he was absolutely fine. But when I took that shot, I didn't realize the repercussions that shot would have with me. So I went home, and they give you time off to deal with this, and they assign you to the borough, it's called. They put you on desk duty for a few days. And so the first officers that arrived were on desk duty, and I was on desk duty. And it started resonating with me that thankfully he lived, but I had made the decision to kill somebody. And it really bothered me because I had always been on the opposite side of things where it was always about saving a life. And at this point in time, when he pointed his gun at us, it was about stopping him. It wasn't about taking his life, but if that had happened, I was okay with it. And that really messed with my 23-year-old mind. And I didn't realize just how much that was going to mess with me. So I go back to patrol, and you're going to find out a little bit more about this as we go on. Fast forward about 6 months to October. And my partner and I had decided we probably shouldn't work together anymore. And there's a reason behind that. We had been dating, something I don't really recommend, but it happens all the time in law enforcement. And when I was at the shooting, I was not thinking 100% tactically correct. I was thinking about
hang on, Mike. Dorothy, you are echoing really, really bad.
Yeah, I was wondering if anybody could hear that.
She's handling it. So say what you said again, sir.
So I was doing something that was not really advisable. I was dating my partner. And while I should have been thinking 100% about tactics, I was not thinking all about tactics. I was thinking about my partner and her safety. And I'm sure she was thinking the same thing about me. So we had decided that we probably should not work together anymore. So when you fast forward that 6 months, I don't like working Halloween. So I was supposed to be off on Halloween. And my partner had said, why don't you come in? It was the last night we were supposed to work together. So we had made it through almost the entire night. And about 6:30 in the morning, a call came on the other side of the precinct for a stolen car, and it was drizzling out. When I put the car in drive, I actually said, somebody's going to get killed doing this. I never got up to a high rate of speed. I got up to about 45 miles an hour. I had my lights on. I would bleep the siren here and there. And a gentleman stepped into the street at one point where I just wanted to tap the brakes. What I did not know at the time was the car had gone in for service. And in the NYPD, it's not like in other agencies down south or in throughout the country where you take your cars home. The NYPD rotates the cars 24/7. So the cars are always in service, and they're beaten on really bad. So even though our car was fairly new, it was in service a lot of time. They had not changed the left rear brake, even though it had gone in for brake jobs multiple times. The result of that was the drum was cracked and the rivets were exposed in the brake pad.
Right.
So it actually caused us to go into a spin. And we were in a terrible, terrible single car accident into a tree.
I'm sorry. I know that you're telling this story and you're trying to keep the tone, but Norm said, Norman Bissell.
Oh, Norman's
up in here, and he said, "I love story time with Chaplain." So they work together at Clermont PD.
Yes, I love Norman. How you doing, Norm? Thank you for cracking Dr. J up.
Yeah, I know the tone of the story. I just messed it all up, and I'm sorry, but that was funny. We're going diving tomorrow, so this should be fun.
So when that's where I was supposed to go. So we were in a really horrible car accident. It was a single car into a tree, 45 miles an hour, ended up turning into about 110 miles an hour of side frontal impact. And I was ejected through the rear windshield. I was a vest save because when I hit the steering wheel, I pushed the steering wheel up about 4 feet.
Wow.
And then snapped backwards. My partner was actually the unlucky one. She went over the computer and under the dashboard on my side of the car and was pinned in the car for over an hour. Fractured femur, fractured pelvis, ruptured spleen, ruptured bladder. Thank God she didn't die. I mean, it was that bad where we were very lucky she didn't die. At the time, I didn't know anything about the brakes. I knew something had gone wrong with the brakes, but I truly didn't know at the time that there was true negligence involved with the brakes. All I was able to tell the highway that investigated it was check the brakes. Something's up with the brakes. But I went through a tremendous amount of survivor's guilt she didn't die, but I went through the guilt of her injuries. And her injuries were even more severe than that, but that's her story to tell, and I'm not going to go with some of her injuries.
Right.
So when we were in the hospital, again, I'm 23 years old, so this is way back when, before PTSD is really recognized. There's a group called the Police Self-Support Group that I actually recognized was saving my life back then. They were visiting the hospitals. Actually, there was a cop that was shot that was in the same hospital as Jamaica Hospital in Queens. They had originally come to visit him, and they ended up visiting myself and my partner as well. My partner was in intensive care. One of the guys came in and tried to talk to me about my injuries and my partner, and I wanted nothing to do with him. I was like, just please leave me alone. I'm concentrating on my partner. And he left me with his business card. And he said, just please hold on to my card. You don't know this now, but I think you're going to need us. And when you do, it's going to be pretty dire. And I held on to his card. So when I went home, I was not able to care for myself. I had to move in with my dad. I had broken my back in 8 places. I herniated some discs.
It's amazing you're walking, man.
I'm a very blessed man.
Yeah.
There's a reason I'm a chaplain today.
And that's at 23.
That was at 23.
Wow.
And so I had the shooting 6 months prior, and then right into this car accident about 6 months later. And now this is the girl that I was dating, cared a great deal about. Now she has anger over the accident, and she's got to blame somebody. And I'm that guy, obviously. The precinct's also going to blame somebody. It's a single car into a tree. There's no skid marks. What are they going to think? Obviously, they're going to blame me. I'm blaming myself too, because I'm thinking I should have done something different. I should have protected her somehow. I should have done anything to
well, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas will kill you. And I think that's part of, that's a huge part of survivor's guilt. It's like, I could have done more. When my best friend died and I pulled her out of the car, it was like, oh, if I wouldn't have went to date her, if I drove myself crazy for like 20 years, and only to realize that like it would not have mattered. It
unreal, right?
It happened the way that it happened, and there's not much me feeling, survivor's guilt isn't going to change the past at all. So reconciling that was very challenging for me.
I can't even imagine. So when I was with my dad, I ended up staying in my little brother's room, so I completely disrupted their lives. He had to sleep in my dad's office, and they had to take care of me, and I was spiraling. I was going through some real serious PTSD issues. I was having nightmares, flashbacks. I was dreaming about the shooting. I was dreaming about the car accident. I was having a lot of people that were angry with me. At the time, I thought I wanted to go back and work at the precinct. That was probably one of the biggest mistakes I made, was going back to the original precinct. And it was interesting because one of the chiefs had told me I should probably transfer out and go somewhere else, because he knew that anger was going to be there. Mm-hmm. And it's a natural thing. You know, nobody did anything wrong by being angry.
Yeah.
So I one night, after a particularly bad dream, and after I had spiraled really badly, I had it, and I just was like, I'm done. So I remember I woke up and I'm like, I'm just not doing this anymore. And I picked up my gun. It was right near the holidays. I couldn't see my girlfriend anymore. I was just disassociated with everything. And if you check off the boxes of all the symptoms of PTSD, it was all there, but nobody was there to teach me. And I actually took my gun and put it against my head and started pulling the trigger. And I looked down at the end table, and that business card was on the end table. So now they teach us some things we're not supposed to say. And I called that guy, and there were some things he said that probably we wouldn't say today, but they worked. He asked me he knew exactly what I was doing. And he said, can I just hold on for a minute? And he would send somebody to the house. And the good thing about the NYPD is a few good things, but one of the really good things is it's so big that somebody's been in the same exact situation you've been in. They actually sent somebody to the house that had been in a fatal car accident the year prior. He was the driver, and he had lost his partner. So when that guy spoke to me, he had said, Mike, I know what you're thinking about doing, and you can do exactly that. He goes, I was there. He says, I was doing the same exact thing. He says, but you've got it a whole lot better than I did. And again, some things probably shouldn't have been said quite that way, but they really worked with me and they resonated. He was like, if I want to talk to my partner, I have to go to a headstone. He says, I would give anything to have my partner be mad at me and yell at me or curse at me. He says that you're in a position I would love to be in.
That's a pretty amazing way to reframe something.
He
gave you in a completely different perspective.
And it was interesting because he was suffering from bad PTSD too. And to this day, I think he suffers with it. But he then said, you know, you have a decision to make. You can either continue on the path you're going and absolutely make a waste of this and make this a true, even further tragedy than it is. He said, or you can do something like what I'm doing, and you can make some kind of a triumph out of this tragedy. You can get some training and start helping others that are having the same struggles that you're having.
Right.
Because there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You don't have to suffer like this. What you're going through is PTSD. And I get emotional when I think of this because it redirected my entire life. And it resonated with me so much that police self-support group, I ended up becoming a board member of that group. And I ended up doing public speaking and going for the training. And that's how I became an instructor at the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. So I became so passionate about all this because it saved me. And that's how I met Dr. Royster. And we went on our path with all this. But it's also interesting because you think that the story would end there. And again, it's kind of just the beginning of the story.
Nope, more trauma for you.
Life is very interesting. Well, more trauma for the entire NYPD.
Yes. Well, the world. But
Yeah, because everybody owns 9/11. But
Yes.
the build-up to 9/11 was really interesting. So I ended up going back full duty. I was originally, this was almost a career ender. They actually told me that I couldn't be a cop anymore, and I really fought my way back to the job and became full duty. I also started going to the memorial in Washington, D.C. and helping survivors that had lost officers in the line of duty.
Mm-hmm.
And one year they had the people that were at the Alpha Mura building, which is the Oklahoma City bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having a discussion with the men and women that were at that building, and we were saying that nothing as bad as this will ever happen in the United States. And they were really traumatized, and we did the best we could to help them as well. And I truly believe that nothing worse than the Alpha Mura building would happen in the United States. That was a terrible disaster. And then you fast forward to 9/11, 2001. And we have 9/11. When 9/11 happened, I was a narcotics detective working in the Bronx, and I was also representing over 20,000 men and women as a board member in the Fraternal Order of Police for the state of New York. And I was on that board of the police cell support group, helping other cops that were struggling with catastrophic illnesses and injuries. When the plane hit, I was getting ready to go to election duty, and I was getting my uniform on, and I remember thinking, like everybody else thought, oh, it's a small plane or something, and it was an anomaly, and I continued getting dressed, and then that second plane hit, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Same thoughts that everybody else had. This is way worse than we thought.
Yeah, I think the whole world stopped when the second plane hit. I really do.
I can't imagine what people that were there went through, because I wasn't there. I saw it on TV. So the people that were at Ground Zero at the time, it's unreal. And then, I speak to pilots now, and I speak to, the air traffic controllers about pulling the planes down and all that. Everybody truly owns 9/11. But I got a marked Fraternal Order of Police car because I knew I wasn't going to be able to get into the city. And I used that car to get into the city, and I was going lights and sirens. And as I looked behind me, I saw this line of civilian cars following me. And guys were hanging out, men and women were hanging out the window holding their shields out as they would pass, marked patrol cars and stuff that were blocking off roads to get us to the city. And I realized they were using my car to follow. And I saw a couple things that I had never, ever seen before. I saw them funneling everybody off the Long Island Expressway to allow us to get onto the LIE. It was the first time they had called everybody in to work for the police department, the fire department, emergency service, EMS. Even people that were on vacation and out sick, they were telling everybody to come in. And then they had the toll booth. The gates were open to the tolls, and they were just waving us through. And I went into the Midtown tunnel, and as I was going into the tunnel, I saw one of the towers come down. Mm. And the skyline that I had seen my entire life blocked by a building suddenly wasn't blocked by that building. And I was terrified. I was like, I thought we lost tens of thousands of people when that building came down. And then when I went into the tunnel, I had the thought, are they going to hit the tunnel? And are we in danger being in the tunnel? And obviously, thankfully, we weren't, but it's kind of crazy what you think of as you go through these scenarios. Mm-hmm. And I ended up responding there and doing search and rescue recovery for basically 30 days. And I was exposed to a lot of everything. I was there when number 7 came down, and some of the things that resonated with me, that I'm sure resonated with some of the other responders. We remember like smells and sounds with trauma, right?
Absolutely.
The smell of ground zero is a smell that I will never get out of my head. And every now and then that musty smell comes back, and it just drags me right back. And I'm sure it drags everybody else that lived around there and worked there right back. And then, Dorothy, you know what a Scott air pack is? The air packs that the firefighters wear.
Okay.
When they're going into a fire. So if they stop moving or they run out of air, there's an alarm that goes off. So when we were doing the search and rescue recovery, we could hear that alarm, but it was on the opposite side of the concrete.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't get to them. And when I would hear a truck backing up, it would bring me to that alarm, and it would really bother me for a long time. So it was kind of interesting because now I'm an instructor with a lot of things to do with PTSD and peer support and suicide prevention. So I'm thinking, I got this in the bag. I can handle this. I end up
surprise.
Yeah. I end up working in a unit called the Early Intervention Unit. I asked to transfer there because that's the unit that took care of all the members of the service who were affected by 9/11. So after the search and rescue recovery, I was doing debriefings, diffusings, one-on-ones, all the things that we do for peer support. That's what we were doing. And we were thinking way outside of the box, because usually with peer support, you do like 72 hours after an incident is when your target frame time is. But when does the incident end at 9/11? We were going for a year with 9/11 going on. So we had to give these guys tune-ups, and they weren't still able to deal with it the way they properly should have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people still fell through the cracks. And I'm worried about them, but we're not taking care of ourselves this whole time.
Never take care of ourselves. Dorothy?
How old were you when you were at 9/11?
I was in my 30s. Okay. I'm 50. I'm going to be 55 in August. So
he just the thing is he shaves, so you can't really tell how old he is.
I lost all my hair from all of this.
Sneaky like that.
Well, I'm thinking 23, 8 place, your back broken in 8 places, you know, feel like your life's crushed at that point, lost the love of your life, basically. You know, everybody's pissed off at you at age 30. Now you got the world ending, so to speak. Okay, so you're the first one that said, was that an election year?
Let me put a quick caveat in there. I have the love of my life now, but the love of my life at the time.
Right. That's right.
What we meant.
I don't want to get in trouble.
No, she's great.
No.
She's great.
It's all good.
So what was your question?
You said that was an election year?
Yeah, it was Giuliani. It was one of his election years.
Oh, so it was just like basically state. Then it wasn't, because I looked up who the president was at that time, and it was George W. Bush.
Oh, so, it was George Bush. He came to Ground Zero. I met him at the White House. We went through a lot of different things. We did the opening bell of the NASDAQ, the closing bell of the stock exchange, because of the stuff with the Fraternal Order of Police. I was very blessed to do a lot of things that took my mind off of my self-care.
Right.
It was very interesting how you start spiraling again. And it was also interesting. It's somebody else's story, but it's somebody we work with. Dr. Royce, I think you know who I'm talking about. But one of my bosses ended up moving down south. And she's a wonderful woman. It's a sergeant I work with. And she ended up doing a lot of peer support down south as well. She's a licensed mental health professional. She was suffering at the time as well. And here we are working in early intervention together, not knowing the trauma that we're going through. And we were exhibiting all of the symptoms, but completely shoving them right under the carpet because, we got to take care of everybody else. So needless to say, they why are cops divorced? all the time. Well, because we didn't have this training and we didn't know what to look for, and firefighters and EMS and nurses and doctors, like these key career people.
To bury it, you just keep yourself busy and hopefully it'll go away, right? Shove it
Yeah,
under the rug.
yeah, and it never works because it just gets worse. I'm twice divorced, and I remember when I first came home from 9/11, my wife at the time was like, when I was going back, she's like, "What do you mean you're going back?" And I'm like, "Well, I got to go back to ground zero. I have friends that are in there, and I want to try and get them out." She's like, "You can't go back," and I'm like, "I got to go back." She was really upset that I was going back. And, you know, I made a lot of mistakes as a husband. I'm not blaming all on 9/11, but it did not help my marriage at all.
People who serve being married to people who don't serve have a really hard time making it work.
Yeah, it was not helpful.
Because they don't understand the mission. They don't understand the drive, the motivation, you know, because theirs are different.
Well,
not good or bad, just different.
So it's interesting though, because there were a couple things that happened at Ground Zero that resonate. They you know the pictures of the flag with the firefighters and cops. There's two different pictures. There's one that was primarily cops, but there are firefighters around there if you look. And there's another one with primarily firefighters, and there are cops if you look. I was there when both those flags went up, and I remember the chills that went through me, and I actually felt, and it's going to sound really corny, but it's true. I felt the presence of God. I was like, He's here. But I also thought, when we get off the site, we're in the country. We're in New York. We have our families and support. And I thought about the soldiers that were overseas during the wars who didn't have that. And they didn't have any of that support. We had the American Red Cross. We had the Salvation Army. We had some wonderful volunteers, our coworkers, our families. There were people that were surrounding us with love and care all the time. So we were in the middle of hell, but we were blessed the entire time. But we were also in hell and we were in trouble.
Right.
And it made us really change a lot of what we do with critical incident stress management. I'm very proud of the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation and what they've done. I'm proud of Dr. Royster and the Trauma Recovery Incentive Program that she's created, because I had helped form one of the Northeast Florida chapters, Central Florida chapters of Concerns of Police Survivors, and I was helping with, like I said, with the memorial services. So
the better side of CPS, just saying.
What was that?
Concerned police survivors. I said that's the better part of CPS.
Yes, very true. So I went to, do you guys remember the flag that was at Ground Zero? Mm-hmm. They had a flag that went around the country that they had recovered at Ground Zero. So that flag was brought around for people to repair it. And somebody had put my name in to put 2 stitches in the flag for a couple of the guys that I had lost, a couple of friends I had lost. So this flag was in a huge room, and it was escorted by 2 firefighters. So when I'm in Washington, I'm going to a room with this flag. And when I say huge room, I mean like a giant auditorium type room. And when I walked in and saw the flag, I was like, man, this thing stinks. Like that Ground Zero smell was just so, it just permeated the air in a really bad way. And I got really upset. I started crying, and I was like, just brought right back to 9/11 again. And I mentioned this to the firefighters that were escorting the flag. And I put the stitches in and I cried with them a bit. And then before I went out, I had a moment alone. And before I went out, one of the firefighters came up to me and he was like, hey, detective, I just wanted to mention something to you. I was like, yeah, what's that? And he goes, flag doesn't stink. I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, this flag really stinks. I can smell Ground Zero. He goes, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. That flag doesn't smell at all.
Right.
He said, you're probably going to have a really bad night. You're re-traumatized from what's going on right now. He says, I recommend you go speak to somebody because I don't want you to go through what I think you're going to go through tonight.
Right.
And he was spot on because once again, I was going down that path and I was having some problems. And I went through EMDR that night with Roger Solomon, who was one of the guys that helped found EMDR. But it didn't stick with me. Your trip stuck with me. Trauma Recovery Incentive Program that Dr. Royster did, that really stuck with me and helped me out. But
Trauma Recovery Intervention Program.
Incentive.
Just the intellectual property is named TRIP.
Yes.
So Trauma Recovery Intervention Protocol. Yes.
I just want to give people the incentive to get it done.
Yeah. Yes, please do that. That's good.
There's a message I really trying to pound into people here, and that's if you're suffering, don't suffer alone. There's no reason to do it. We've just had a lot of suicides recently, and it's really on my mind, and that's why I'm glad you guys called for this podcast. So when I was suffering with this, it had revisited me even in my late 40s when I was a chaplain, as a chaplain for Clermont. And I mentioned this to Dr. Royster. She and I were working together. And she became the clinical director for our peer support team. And I was like, what can I do about this? She's like, funny you mention that.
Yeah, I think you called me. I called you. I called you to check on you. And I believe it was a couple weeks before 9/11. And
I was going to be the guest speaker.
Yeah, you were going to be a guest speaker. And I was like, I need to check on you and see how you're doing. And you said, not well, because the person that was at ground zero with you had passed. He got cancer and died.
Was that what triggered it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you had not been sleeping very well for the past 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh, look at that. Okay, I'm going to run you through this thing. And he's like, what thing?
I literally was like, what thing? What are you going to do to me?
And he's like, I trust you, but what thing? So I'll let you tell the rest of the story.
So yeah, I was really tired of suffering with this PTSD. Like it just keeps revisiting and coming back and rearing its head. And I'm like, this has got to stop. I mean, it gets old.
He was tired of being tired, is what he said.
It really is true. And you know, a couple things. Either you're going to deal with trauma on its terms, or it's going to deal with you.
Yes.
I mean, you need to deal with it properly. And we get exposed to incidents in our careers as first responders and as doctors and nurses and those even air traffic controllers and all the type A jobs really drag on everybody. And then we have that perpetual garbage pail that everybody just keeps throwing the pieces of paper in. But what people don't realize is that garbage pail gets full. You don't need a critical incident to have your trauma get you. It comes and gets you. And you better pay its homage and do what you need to do properly. And so when this was rearing its head, I knew I needed help again. When I went through with the police self-support group, I got therapy, and the therapy was wonderful. The guy named Dr. Bonifacio was my psychologist, and he was amazing. And I went to therapy for 2 years. And by the way, anybody that is an officer or a deputy that's suffering, I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. You are not going to have a career ender here. You're not going to lose your guns forever. That echo's starting again.
Sorry.
all good.
I muted her. I'll
just
shut
wanna
her
give me
down.
trauma.
Don't worry.
That whole time that I went through those suicidal ideations and everything, I never lost my guns. The NYPD stood by me and trusted the people that were caring for me and listened to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor was like, he does not need to lose his guns. He's getting the care. You don't need to take them away. And they were right. Once I got over that initial night, I was never on that brink again. I was not having an issue that was, I wasn't suicidal. I was having some serious issues, but I was never suicidal like that again. I was self-destructive in some other ways. I would do things like do shopping sprees. What do they call it when you're I know there's actually a term for it. I'm forgetting it. When you shop to make yourself feel better.
Shopaholic. I have 2 of those in my home. And it isn't me.
It releases dopamine and it gives you a feeling of like serotonin, dopamine, all kinds of chemicals in your brain, but it's just the impulsive act.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I love stereo equipment and like audio videos.
Some people call shopaholics mania. So be careful how you like.
I dove into that
with this manic episode. Like,
I went into some serious debt. There were just there were some bad behaviors that I did. Very compulsive and impulsive things that were not good. But they were all symptoms of my trauma. When 9/11 was coming around this time, some wonderful things happened. The Dr. Royster with this TRIP program was amazing. It does not re-traumatize you at all. You don't even really have to revisit your trauma. It's basically a way for your brain to file your incident away properly. And it's like removing the rocks from the water so the water just goes smooth and there's no more rapids. I have not really had an incident with my PTSD since TRIP until the World Trade Center Health Program started messing with me just recently.
Yeah, but I also think that's a different trauma.
Yeah,
because when we did it with the trauma recovery intervention protocol, with regard to the blocks of time that we focused on, you have not had that revisited.
No.
The challenge is the frustration and the anxiety. That's the part we didn't go over. So just not to correct you, but
no. I just
finding
there's new. We were speaking about this earlier today, Dr. Royster and I, because it's very interesting that a program that is, and to all the 9/11 responders out there, you are not alone. There's a lot of us that are suffering through paperwork and problems with NIOSH and CDC and Sedgwick. They're just making it impossible for us to get the care that we're supposed to be getting. Simple things like getting your medical records. They won't give them to you. It's ridiculous. And yeah, I'm putting it out there. Yeah, we're on a very public podcast right now, and I'm tired of being jerked around, and I'm tired of the 9/11 responders and the people that were out there saving people getting jerked around. It should not be happening. There is funding for it, and they need to take care of the people that took care of others. And this is disgusting behavior. John Feel from the Feel Good Foundation is fighting for us.
There's a lot more, and I'll connect you. Like I said on the phone, I'm going to connect you to Bill Hayes, and you guys can definitely do some work together because he's helped a lot of people get what they need.
Which is
and he's been on the show before.
I told him. Yeah.
He's one of our first ones. So.
Yeah.
Hey, really?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
I'll send you the link.
The timing is pretty amazing of when you guys got in touch with me for this. And, but I know.
Well, you can thank Colonel because she had kittens to take to the veterinarian.
No thanks.
Well, I told her, I said, I'm going to call Chaplain Saxe. And she said, yeah, do that. So
what I find ironic, I guess, or I don't know what the word to use, when you said that you were at Ground Zero and you could just feel,
God.
yeah. My family was there this past summer for the very first time ever. And I could feel God there, but I could also feel the people that died
Absolutely.
at that spot. So I mean, and I'm not a first responder or anything like that, but I am empathetic. So when you said that, I was just like, I got chills because I was like, I was there and I can feel it this many years later. So it's a powerful sight, like no doubt about it. And I don't think that's ever going to leave.
So it's kind of interesting because when I went to Pearl Harbor and they had people that were at Pearl Harbor were sitting in front of the Arizona. That's at Pearl Harbor. So they were actually in front of the Arizona signing books and answering questions, and they had been there. And they were expressing how important it was for them to be there. Dr. Royster just went away.
Yeah, she'll be right back.
Okay. So I was like, I realized that it's a timeless thing that everybody needs to know about. 9/11 is the same thing to me. I'm not saying that 9/11 is Pearl Harbor or anything like that. I'm not trying to compare anything, but I think it's important for 9/11 responders to get out there and speak about it. And because, as we were saying before the show, everybody owns 9/11. It's not the first responders don't own it. The people that were in the buildings don't own it. The families don't. Everybody was touched by it, and it changed the world. Mm-hmm. So I think anybody who was a part of rescue operations or recovery or any of it should get out there and share it, because we keep the memory alive and we create something that's a lot more real for the country now.
100%. And you're right. Like, I don't know of anybody who doesn't remember. I remember exactly what I was doing that morning. I was at work, and it was funny because I was at Leisure Trailer Sales. So shout out to them if you need a trailer here in Windsor, Ontario. And and their brother lives in the States, and we're here in Canada. And when the plane hit the first tower, I don't know, somebody must have been paying attention to some kind of media outlet or something in the office. And it was the only time you were allowed to run back. They had it on the TV, and it was just the whole day we were just checking, just checking up and following that, and making sure that his brother was okay and things like that. I remember exactly what I was doing. And you're right. Like, it was nationwide. Everybody remembers it, I'm sure, if they were born in that time period. Remembers that. Just like the San Francisco earthquake. Remember when that happened many decades ago? Mm-hmm. My dad had footage of that. He had video. Back then it was VHS tapes. Yes, kids, I know you don't know what the hell that is, so go Google it. But we had tapes upon tapes of that. And so, if that was back way before 9/11, but now I'm really dating myself. But anyhow, it doesn't matter. So if we had footage on 9/11, well, now that it's the digital age, we can go anywhere online to get that. But yeah. Okay, so Dr. Royster, I want to know more about this. You wouldn't let me ask about the Purple Heart. Where does this come in?
Oh, the Purple Heart. Because of my injuries from the car accident and the fact that I'm a best safe. So a couple of things I've gotten through my career that mean a lot to me. I was given a Best Save award, which sounds kind of weird. Like, I didn't do anything. The vest saved me. But it means a lot to me that I have this award because the vests make a difference, not just in shootings. My vests, if I was wearing a steel shock plate in my vest, so trauma plate, if I hadn't been wearing that trauma plate, I'd be dead. And that's what Point Blank, the vest company, had determined. They were like, he'd be dead. So they acknowledged that and gave me a new vest and gave me an award. The American Police Hall of Fame acknowledges the trauma of the injuries. And it's incredible what they do when you are recognized as a Purple Heart recipient. And this is a law enforcement Purple Heart recipient, not a military Purple Heart recipient. They remember you on Father's Day. They remember you on Christmas. They actually remember, and it's funny, they I guess I have to update my records because they actually send something to my ex-wife every Mother's Day as well, which is kind of amazing that they do these things. They make sure that we know we're thought of. And this is so many years later that they're thinking of us. And there's volunteers that are doing this, and it comes out of their funding. And it's just that even means more to me than the Purple Heart. Just getting that little letter in the mail with a little Christmas ornament or something that's saying, "Hey, just thanks for what you did and thanks for being here." It's tremendous. So if somebody was injured in a line of duty like that, there's a program where they will acknowledge you. You just need to document it or have somebody document it for you rather, and have it submitted, and they acknowledge that. It's pretty incredible.
I was going to say, that is pretty incredible. So, okay, because inquiring minds wanted to know, how did we go from police officer to chaplain?
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting path.
A New York effing police officer.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'll start doing detective jargon, and you can tell I was a detective because we can curse. And Norman and Royster will laugh it up, but I start doing that because they're like, "Oh, the detective's here."
Yeah.
I'm just saying you can love Jesus and still curse at the same time because I am that lady. So I get you.
Just hope it's a good thing Jesus loves us even when we're sinners, right?
Yeah.
Thank God.
So I had realized that I should have died a lot of times. And there's a reason that I'm still here. And at all of these different junctures in my life, I've always felt the presence of God at these junctures. And some people are going to be like, "Oh, that's corny," or it really is the truth. When I've been in the hospital, one of the things I didn't tell you, right after I had surgery for part of my back injuries. I re-injured my back in 2002, right after 9/11. I had a slip and fall after doing CPR on a baby. And it destroyed my back. I had to get my neck fused. I had to get my lower back fused. And when I got my lower back fused, they went in through the front and the back. It took 2 surgeons. What I didn't know is I had something called factor V Leiden with a heterozygote disorder. That means that I'm prone to throw blood clots.
Oh, gotcha.
Right after the surgery, I had
a whole lot of words, man.
Yeah. I had a full-blown pulmonary embolism right after the surgery that I was conscious for. And the nurse gave me a clot buster and saved my life. So time and again, I've been saved and saved and saved. And I've been pursuing this critical incident, stress management, and assisting not just first responders, but nurses and teachers and doctors and people in the first responder field. And it all came full circle. And I realized that there's a higher calling here. Mm-hmm. and that I needed to really start getting into the Word and studying the Bible. And that's exactly what I did. A friend of mine is a bishop, and he actually is part of an organization and assists people with going down the path of getting ordained and getting trained and licensed. And I did that. And it's been amazing doing that, because the combination of all of this, it worked. My people are like, well, do you run a church? No, I don't. My ministry is first responders and the public that I run into at different scenes or different events. And if they want to talk about God, hey, we'll talk about God. It's great. And he's great. But even I now run a canine for Clermont Police Department, who's a crisis response canine. And he has been such a tool for all of this, where he starts the discussion. I mean, he doesn't talk, obviously, but
it would have been funnier if you said he's such a tool. I'm like, I can see that.
He is a tool.
Buckley's great, though.
My dog's got some serious attitude. He's got
a fantastic personality.
Yeah, he's the best dog in the world. You'll meet Buckley, and he's the coolest. He went to Denise's training in Texas, and was probably
all there. Yeah, and he tried to jump on me, but he was only trying to get food.
Yes, he was. He's very food driven.
I thought he was loving on me. I was so excited. And he's like, oh, he's not trained to do that. And I'm like, oh, he's after my food.
There he is. Look at that.
Oh, there he is.
Come here.
He can hear you talking about him.
Hello, buddy.
It's hilarious. That was not like he just came on. He knew we were talking about him.
He's the star of the show.
He's a trip.
At the table in the center. So like everybody's like, ooh, dog. And, he's got a service vest on, but still, you just ask permission, and a lot of people are pretty receptive. It depends on what the dog is doing, but.
So you have to have confidence though when you have a dog like him, because I'll go to a school, because we go to a lot of schools together. And when I go to a school, there's hundreds of kids that are like, Buckley, and they're like, who are you?
Pretty much. I just, the dog brought me here.
And Buckley is named after Conrad Buckley, who is an officer we lost from COVID.
Right.
And he's actually yes. And he's actually got Conrad's really cool attitude, so it's a perfect name for him.
So I have to ask then. So what exactly is? You says crisis response canine handler. So what does that really mean?
So what Buckley will do is we go to incidents. Like if there's a shooting, if there's a bad car accident, if there's a fire, he'll take care of the first responders. I'll actually do group debriefings with him, and I let him loose in the room, and he will let me know who's traumatized.
Yep.
Obviously, there's a lot of officers and firefighters that are big, burly, tough guys, and they don't like to admit when they're traumatized. Buckley breaks right through that. He's like, yeah, that guy's traumatized, and he'll let me know. He actually indicates to me on people that are traumatized. We also will go to crime victims. We respond directly to their houses sometimes, and he will interact with the crime victims. And he's amazing at what the relief he gives to them. The way we got Buckley was I was at a 9/11 presentation where I was going to be a lecturer, and I had found out something about one of the buildings. There was a friend of mine was in one of the buildings that had come down, and I thought it had been cleared. And this fact upset me. And they saw that I got upset, and they brought one of those dogs out for me. And it really worked. It helped me out a lot for the moment. And it actually helped my sergeant out as well, that same person that I'm speaking about. So I brought this back to Chief Broadway at the Clermont Police Department. I said, hey, have you ever thought about getting one of these dogs? Because they're really cool. And I'm going to give another shout out here too. Brevard County Sheriff's Office has a program called Paws and Stripes. And the program is absolutely amazing. They rescue dogs, and they train the rescued dogs for this work. and then they partner officers and first responders and the like with those dogs, and that's how Buckley came to fruition. Is through that program. Buckley only cost us $100.
Wow.
He's worth thousands of dollars. He's amazing with what he does. He helps so many people. We go to schools and do one-on-one therapy with kids. We do group work with people. That's what a crisis response dog is. They do critical incident work and peer work and work with the public.
So do you do this like as like your side business, or do you actually work for the Clermont Police Department?
He gets his vet bills paid for, and they get me doing it.
Yeah.
I just do it because I love doing it.
Oh my!
I'm blessed
Wow.
to do it. I'm truly, and none of the chaplains are paid. I'm the lead chaplain. I have 3 other chaplains that work with me, and they're all amazing. And I'm also the same thing with the fire department, fire chaplain there too. I'm very blessed with the people I work with and what they do. And Chief Broadway and Deputy Chief Graysick allow us to do what we need to do for the community. They don't just say, hey, you got to work Clermont with Buckley. Buckley is allowed. When somebody needs Buckley in another county, Buckley goes.
Yeah, they're very pro mental health. I mean, you already know that from Chief Broadway's interview, but he is, the foremost. He's an interventionist too. He can't help himself. He doesn't want to see anybody struggle ever.
He's been amazing at the level that he goes to make sure the community and the officers and the civilians are all taken care of. And it's the same thing. Even David Azell, for the chief of the fire department, also cares a lot about his men and women.
Yeah, they send Semper Modus people, and then they'll follow up. Did they reach out? And I'm like, whoa. Because most people will refer people, and you never hear from them again. These guys are like, well,
you can't get rid of it.
No, always check it in. They don't get to know what we talk about, but they do get to know if you attended.
Absolutely.
I do want to put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
So
short of a subpoena, no notes are given, and I fight I fight them.
Anything.
Correct.
Dude, you're bothered.
I have the vaguest notes in North America. Client attended session like that.
So, and again, for those cops out there that are nervous about reaching out and firefighters and everything, in 30 years, I have never been subpoenaed, and I've done thousands of diffusings, debriefings, and one-on-ones.
I'm sure you have.
The state's attorney's office and all the states respect us, and they leave it alone. It's a process that needs to be left alone, and we need to make sure the mental health is being taken care of, and they want that.
Well, and that is a big concern for police officers and military alike, is like, what's going to be written in the notes? What am I going to be diagnosed with? What am I? And it's like, your notes are going to be like, I legit write down as part of my note just to get reimbursed. Client attended session. Client participated in interventions. Like that is a legit what I write in my notes. Because I only have to have like 4 to 5 sentences, and boy, I'm as minimal as humanly possible. That's so awesome. For them to be concerned about the details or notes coming out later, like that's not even a thing. We take care of our own,
and it's been incredible. The way that I don't know how much time we have, but the way the police self-support group was formed is very similar. They had, and it's a very interesting story. Do you remember the FALN bombings, Dorothy? So in New York, they had a terrorist organization that was laying out bombs in the 80s. And one of the guys that started the support group, his name is Tony Semt, was seriously injured by one of these bombs. Lost his eye, was basically blown in half. His partner lost his leg. When after the injury, the president of the United States came to visit him, mayors came to visit him, everybody was visiting him. And then nobody came to visit him. And that's what happens with our injuries. Everybody goes to the hospital, everybody comes to visit, and then nobody's there. And nobody's there for the families afterwards. Now we're getting better with this, but that's generally the issue, is where is the support? So the family of these officers, and these officers realized that this was what was going on in the 80s, and they formed this group called the Police Self Support Group. And that's the foundation of what they were like, wow, we're going through what we don't know what, but we know it's bad, and we need to go through it not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all out. And then they added the catastrophically ill segment, because we had some people that were going through cancers and things like that. And it's an amazing organization. We have a lot of Medal of Honor winners in there from the NYPD that are incredible. And I think every state should have these types of organizations, because there's so many officers struggling, and deputies and firefighters.
I'm glad they have a support group that's needed. I mean, there's your peer support group within each station, but I'm glad that they have something outside of that too.
I'd like to know why firefighters, and this is a whole other podcast, but I'd like to know why firefighters they respond in groups. They eat together, they sleep together appropriately, not inappropriately. Why are they struggling so hard with their trauma when they seem to have the social setting that would help them heal their trauma? Yet their suicide rate is through the roof.
Well, I think there's a difference between being alone and being lonely.
Mm-hmm.
You can be with a group for 24-hour shifts, 11, 12 days a month, and still feel lonely.
Oh, yeah.
Or feel alone. I mean, it depends on the camaraderie. It depends on the sense of belonging. It depends on if anybody in that firehouse has your back. Like, there's so many factors that go into that. So it really kind of educating, everyone on this podcast. It's like, just because you're with people doesn't mean you're not lonely.
Oh, that's so valid and valuable.
And there's people in marriages too that they're like, I'm lonely. I see you every single day, but I still feel alone, and I don't think people understand like the vastness of that statement.
Now, I'm glad you brought up marriages too, because one of the things that we speak about with the critical incident spectrum, a lot of our men and women don't want to talk about it, or they're taught not to talk about it with their husbands or wives. And that's in my class. I'm like, wait a minute. If your wife or husband was coming home day after day and you knew they had a bad day, and then you asked them, well, what went on? And they shut down to you every single time and did not share that bad day with you. You don't got to get into details or anything, but how would that make you feel? And to a person, they're like, well, it'll make me feel really bad. I'm like, well, that's what you're doing to your significant other every single time. I
also think that to reduce the 80% divorce rate, or whatever alarming number it is out there right now, I think people need to know who they're marrying. And I think they need to do premarital counseling with anybody who serves, because that wedge and that resentment is built so high on the fact that you're choosing that job over me. That's the appearance. The appearance is that you're choosing your job over me every single day. I've dealt with this too. Even in my line of work, I'm what you would call essential.
Well, yeah, because you're on call all the time. So every time that phone rings.
So that's a big part of the contention in the relationship. It's because you are married to the job, and you're trying to be married to this person. And if this person has any issues with self-esteem, any insecurity, any piece where they truly don't understand that this doesn't change the love I have for you, the fact that I'm required to do this job.
Absolutely. And then add in the normal fears about relationships and everything else too, because that, you know, that everybody's worried you're running off with your partner or the people you work with all the time. And it's like, no, it's not like that.
Yeah, the client that's deployed right now, and he's like, 4 people have come to see me. We just got here 3 days ago, and their wives are filing for divorce.
Wow.
It's because they're uninformed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before they decide to engage in this marriage, the spouses have no concept of the gravity of the situation. You know, I know several people who have been married 30 years to career military, and, you know, things are fine. But at the same time, there are so many that are not. It is the same. I mean, can you imagine being married to a fireman and he's in somebody else's bed 12 days a month? That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's hard. Not to mention, you know, a police officer who's scheduled to work 3 to 1, but they don't get home till 4 o'clock in the morning. Where were you? I was writing reports. What does that mean? Because they have no concept of your job.
We used to call them 4 to 4s.
Yeah.
4 p.m. to midnight.
Yep.
You would call a 4 to 4 because
Right.
Really you wouldn't come home till 4 a.m. And it's horrible on a relationship. Over and over and over again, relationships would suffer. But I think part of that, like this podcast is huge. What you guys are doing is absolutely huge because.
Thank Dorothy. You said you want to do this, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I want to do this.
I think podcast. I think this is the bee's knees.
Well, thank you. And I just want to throw one thing in there because I've been working with military first responders for 3 years now, and I keep hearing the same thing. I've interviewed over 100 people within that role, and the same thing. Like there has to be a support group for your spouse, just like there's a support group for the actual
100%.
first responder. And it's bullshit that there isn't, number one, or very little of it. And so, you know, and I hear that, okay, sometimes the wives and that will get together. I know in the military, I know one mom that actually put the program in place while her husband was deployed and got that running for their specific unit. But there needs to be more of that. And like Dr. J said, have that conversation with your spouse before you get married. Yes, it's great. He looks freaking fantastic in a uniform. But when he's not home, you know, you gotta deal with that, right? So yes, he can look smoking hot in that uniform, honey. But reality is you signed up for a life sentence when you got married. And so, you know, the life sentence means he's going through this. So you have this support to help you get through it. And then when he gets home, I firmly believe there should be some kind of therapy or something so he can decompress his shit before he walks through that door, and it's expected that everything's supposed to be A-okay.
Well, and you know, with the police and the military, you're thinking on-base housing. I just had a new baby. All the wives are getting together while our husbands are deployed, but I don't get along with them. Or I have so much anxiety, I can't sit through one of their little meetings, right? So then they feel even more isolated. Or with police, you know, I've had admin betrayal. So, you know, I know we've been here 5 years and we're all comfortable, but at the same time, like here I am, I'm on leave and I'm about to get fired because of somebody making a stupid decision above me. And now we have to pull up boots and relocate. I mean, Saxe went from NYC down to Florida, right? Now I mean, that's a huge change for somebody who's packing a suitcase along with him.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't understand that we're going to serve a need before we look at what is in the best interest of our spouse.
I think so.
Right or wrong. It just
in the class, we call it like pre-incident planning, but we need like pre-career planning, and then we need pre-marriage planning, because these are huge steps. one of the things I tell the new rookies is, have you thought about your retirement path and what it's going to look like? Because cops start hanging out with just cops. Firefighters start hanging out with just firefighters. Same, most careers do that. But if you only have cops to hang out with, the problem when you retire is your war stories are very singular. They don't change anymore. Nobody wants to hear them anymore.
And most of them were there, so they already know.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear it. They're done.
You're right. Because at the academy, it's the same thing with the newbies. It's like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, I want to be a police chief, and it takes everything my lieutenant has to not lose her stuff. Like Pico was dying when that dude said that. So because she's like, dude, I've been here 24 years and I am a lieutenant, like that doesn't happen in 5 years.
Norm just mentioned a book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, Dr. Gil Martin. That book, I can't recommend that book enough. Norm recommends it. I'm sure you guys recommend it.
No, Pico gave it to me. She was at the TV. Lieutenant Pico, she did a podcast with us. She gave it to me at Dr. Joe's clinic one day. She's handed it to me and said, you got to read this. I'm like, okay. It's really good.
What did you think about it when you first read it?
It was really good. I liked it.
I thought it was amazing how they just put the pieces together and you give it to your family member. When you get on the job, let your family members read it because they don't know what they're getting into.
And it doesn't go over I think people are so hesitant to share their day because they're so worried about traumatizing, but they don't understand that they're building resentment in their partner by not sharing.
That's right.
Like you lose confidence in the relationship. So there's this line where you're like, well, we had this situation. Are you sure you want to give the details? Or I can just share with you, like, we had a situation today and I feel bleh, whatever it is, right? That's what I would be more concerned with as a wife of a police officer is how you're feeling as opposed to the details of the case.
Yeah, they don't have to get into the nitty gritty. That's a perfect example. You don't have to get into the whole mess of the scene. Get into your emotions. That's what's important is the meat.
It is. Because your spouse can always help you through your emotions. I mean, a dude is more likely to solve or fix it and more receptive if the wife is the police officer and she's coming home and sharing details. The way that the information travels in his brain is going to be considerably different than if the roles are reversed. However, at the same time, if a dude is sharing his feelings, that's pretty powerful. That brings up a whole level of connection within that marriage. It makes that bond significantly stronger. By like, I'm angry and I feel like this situation was unjust or unfinished or whatever. They don't need to know that, this happened or that happened or a kid died or whatever,
It's just like our debriefings. We don't want to get into the tactics of the situation.
Not at all.
Sometimes the tactics put the pieces together for the whatever, but the tactics don't really matter. It's what are your emotions going through? What's going through your head during this whole thing? That's what we want to talk about. And it gets very interesting. Now, the other thing though is when these men and women come home, their kids know they went through stuff too. And a lot of times you're like, well, I don't want to expose my kids to this. Well,
you already did because your whole body is telling them what happened.
Exactly. And then when you shut down and you don't share it with your kids, you're teaching them to do the same exact thing. So just give them a little bit of your emotional where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
A synopsis of, well, this happened. And you know what? It made me think of you and how special you are to me. And give your kid a hug. And then, bam, there's the connection. And you taught your kid to talk.
Well, Brene Brown talks about that. She talks about her husband and how, she's a researcher and I think he's in finance. And I think I've mentioned this before, Dorothy, but I'm going to do it again. So like they gauge where they're at when they walk in the door. She's like, I am wiped. I'm at 10%. And he's like, that's okay, babe. I'll make dinner. I'm at 80.
Wow.
Or the next day they're both at 40. Or they're both at 20. It's like, okay, we're not going to have any serious conversations tonight because we don't have it in us. But if you that little effort of giving your spouse a number of the emotional energy you have that you're capable of that night will change your relationship.
That's a great idea. I like that a lot.
Yeah, she's
and I like to give it take with I didn't hear what you said. What did you say? What did you say when you? Because I didn't hear the statement that you said.
He's talking to you, Jay.
Oh, yes. Which statement? Like, how far are we going back, dude?
2 sentences ago.
So Brene Brown, I stole her information. She's completely fantastic. She's very much an interventionist like I am. So I like to pick up pieces and parts of things. And then, I use all my clients as guinea pigs and they all know it. It's like, hey, try this.
That's great.
And it works. And it's like, oh, all right, there's valid. Okay, cool. And then I go to the next one who may have a similar issue and kind of go down that. But, Brene has a psychology background and she did a huge TED Talk on vulnerability. And she pretty much just presents herself as a real human person. Yeah, she studied shame. She studied vulnerability. You need to watch it.
That's really interesting because a lot of our people are vulnerable and they won't acknowledge that.
Yeah. And she talks about the power of it and standing in your truth and talking about how you feel there's no weakness associated with that. I'm angry. There is no reason to get upset by that. But if you make me feel angry, there definitely causes some serious defensiveness and causes a very, a huge wedge between you and your partner. So just changing your language can save a marriage pretty easily.
Kind of wild. It's interesting because part of the classes, as you know, it's about how to word things properly and then what not to use in the.
Well, and as trained and talented as police officers are when they're approaching a suspect to keep them calm so they don't die, like, why wouldn't you do that with your spouse?
Well, it's
or sleep on the couch. You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you take care in your language?
Valid, completely valid. And frequently we run through our discussions with our spouses like bulldozers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's civilians as well.
Because we'll talk all night. Because I love.
Well, I'm loving this conversation because I'm like, yep. This happens in civilian marriages too. Just saying, because if my husband's not a talker and all I want is to say, I want to gauge first of all how the rest of the night's going to go by your mood when you walk in, right? And so to have that first little bit, I know as soon as he walks in the door, he needs 10-15 minutes. You don't dare talk to him. Tonight I had to because we're working on a new car. But other than that, I know he needs 10-15 minutes and then you can have a conversation with him. So after 7 years of being together, I've learned that. But it's the same thing. Like if something happened at work, he doesn't like talking about work. So he wants to leave work at work, which is great. But then your mood has to be different. Like it can't be moody.
Yeah, how about that?
And I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying, if you don't want to talk about it, that's great. But then in the same sense, then everything should be roses at home. Well, anyways. Kristen here says, you're not a bulldozer. You're very well communicating with me. So
that's my better half right there.
Oh, well, then there you go. How blessed are you that she actually joins us tonight? Welcome, my dear. That is precious.
That is
a wonderful woman. I'm blessed.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that no one knows about you, Michael?
The one thing that nobody knows about me.
He's super transparent. I don't know if we can come up with
I'm pretty transparent. That I cry. I'm human.
Nope, knew that. Give me something else.
Like what?
I'm secretive. Come on.
Your wife's helping you out here. She says he loves
meatloaf. I did not know that.
My mother's meatloaf for the first time, I haven't tasted it in like years.
Wow.
It brought me like right back to my mother and grandmother's cooking. It was incredible.
Yeah, Mike and I always we always go get pizza. So I didn't know about the meatloaf. So there you go.
She's the queen of freaking pizza or hamburgers, that woman. I swear to God. If you give her anything else, it's like.
I like Mexican. I like hibachi. I like other stuff.
I didn't know there was a fast food Italian place till I met Dr.
That's true. Oh, that's awesome.
The mall? At the mall? I don't
No,
know.
it's in Clermont. It's like a
drive-through.
A McDonald's drive-through type Italian place. I was like,
I'll find it.
She's like, oh, I got the place to eat. We go walking. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, by the way, my last meal for my birthday weekend, Dr. J, was Olive Garden, which I know is one of her favorites.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know. What's next for you, I guess, in your journey?
Ooh, that's a good question.
What's next for me is expanding the critical incident and stress management envelope. Dr. Royster's helped me get into coaching. So I like to, I'm working with coaching people. And
he's doing a phenomenal job, and he'll never tell you that. So his dog's like, well, of course.
That's something. My dog sleeps with me.
Yeah.
Finding funding to assist with the program with Buckley. That would be a pretty amazing thing as well. Because like right now, my truck it's a 1-year-old truck. It's got 25,000 miles on it. It's a brand new truck. And that's because of the mutual aid and the stuff that we do with all the work that we're doing with Buckley.
So do you have charity status, a 501(c)(3) status, or no?
No, I've been debating on do I do that or not, because I know how much work that can be, and then you can't do anything for profit. So I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea. Just
go for profit. There's so many nonprofits out there, sir. Seriously. And you can get business grants too. Well, in Canada you can. So
that's what I was thinking is
you can absolutely
for a grant for Buckley, a mental health, because he would fall right into a mental health grant. And we're going to so many schools that I would like to see the schools apply for a grant to assist with him.
Well, I watched a news thing today. I got sent, a lieutenant sent me a little news clipping of a police officer. I don't want to get into the debate because we'll be here for 3 more hours, but she mentioned on there that there's 100 officers that have been killed in the line of duty this year already. And typically 100 officers happens at the end of October. So
I know our numbers are through the roof. And our suicides are through the roof.
Yes.
I cannot believe the amount of first responder suicides that we are having this year.
It's insane. But that's the thing. Like that is an absolutely a permanent problem to it. A temporary solution to a permanent problem, and people need to know that they can get help.
Absolutely.
And they're not alone. They're not hanging out there. Like everybody has suicidal ideation somewhere, sometime. Most of the time, that is the case. Anybody in any kind of service has gotten to the point where they've glanced or thought about it, even for a micro minute.
So that, and I'm glad we just mentioned it, because I didn't close the one topic that we were on with confidentiality and your jobs being okay. So with the officers and deputies and stuff out there, I was a representative in the Fraternal Order of Police on the state board, and I'm very familiar with some of the laws. Florida is a great example. Florida just passed a state law that protects our confidentiality. If you have a properly formed critical incident stress management team, the officers are actually covered when they come speak to us, because a lot of times the unions will be like, oh, you can only speak to your union rep and your attorney. I don't want to hear that in Florida.
That's not true.
It's not true in Florida at all. So if the unions are saying that, then they're doing a disservice to the people they're representing. And I'm not slapping out at unions at all. They need to represent properly and tell the people what they need to be doing, and let them get the help they need. Mm-hmm. If the team is properly formed, 100% covered. State law will not allow them to be testimony to be used in court, and it's perfect. So, and Dr. Royster is the doctor that's on our team, so she's very familiar with this as well. Yeah. So we've got to break. So that's part of the answer to your question is, what is my next step? Continuing breaking the stigmas that surround the CISM and peer support envelopes with first responders, and getting proper care out there for people. I just love doing this work under the chaplain envelope and under the peer envelope, and with my dog.
Awesome. And your wife by your side, because she seems pretty freaking amazing. I mean, she's watched the show and she's been in the comments here. So shout out to your wife. I got to do that. Is Dr. Jage, is there any other questions before we wrap this up?
Where do you see yourself in 5 years there, sir? I got to throw him for a loop. It's only fair.
Yeah, you threw me for a loop of that. Hopefully, growing my company bigger with the critical incident stress envelope, so that
what's your plan? So when we get this out there, what are you exactly wanting to do so that we can advertise it?
I want people to get in touch with me, and for the classes that I teach a class called GRIN, which is the group and individual class. That's the class that you would take to start. Any person on a team should have that class. That gives your basics for peer and group and individual support work on a critical incident stress management team. It's really, really good. It's through the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. You can get grants to cover it. Your agencies usually cover it. And I'll travel to do it. Doesn't matter. This is my company will work with people and get this done. So please contact me. This is about getting people trained. This saved my life. That's why I'm so passionate about this.
And what's the best way to get in touch with you?
My email is M as in Michael, last name Saxe, SAXE 01@gmail.com. That is the best way to get in touch with me. Just shoot me an email. Let me know that you want the class, and I'll be happy to get your agency the class or get you guys the class and get you all signed up. And if somebody needs help, reach out to that email as well, and we'll get you the help you need, and it'll all be confidential.
I love that. Perfect.
Sorry, Officer Stahl, I answer. I don't really care what I'm doing.
Essential.
Correct. Case in point. Just saying. So, Thank you, Chaplain Michael J. Saxe, CCISM. Do I get to put the CC? Because I got certified too.
If you take that test, you do.
I don't like tests. Never mind. I got enough abbreviations after my name. It's fine.
I was just say, how many do you really need?
I think I'm at 36 right now.
Yeah, I needed that abbreviation because of the instructor stuff for the company.
Well, you work for the international. I don't teach it, so I just
don't work for that. That's for my company, but
I like the CISD part more than anything.
It's amazing to see. The biggest challenge that I have is when somebody crosses their arms and they're like, and I'm just going to say, I don't believe in this shit. I don't need this shit. And they're angry and they're mad and they're like, and you know they need it. And you're like, I
know exactly who you're talking about because I was in that debriefing with you.
And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I wasn't even referring to anybody here. You're right. And they're like, you're like, I'm going to get you. I know you need it. And now with my dog, he's even better because he's like, yeah, he needs it.
Well, he'll just go sit on you. Like when you're stressed, I was going up to present and he figured out I was nervous. He walks over and sits right on your feet and looks up at you like, you good? No? Okay. And he lays his head down. He's so cute.
So he jumped into somebody's hospital bed the other day.
can totally see that.
It's a trip. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing that we're doing, and it's a wonderful thing you're doing, Dorothy. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you. We'll have to do an update, like Oprah does in a year from now. We'll have to have you come back on. Give us an update.
You go and you get a car and you get a car.
You know what? I can't wait till we're at that place that we can finance all the shows and we can give away millions of dollars after my pocketbook has a little bit in it. Yes, absolutely. That time is coming. The time is almost here.
Yeah, Dorothy's a go-getter. You haven't met her yet. She said very little with regard to this podcast, but
I hope I didn't shut you down.
No, not at all. This is for you to shine, not me to shine.
Correct.
And I step in there's a lot of similarities when people are on, so I share with that. But no. This is the tame me. The untamed me.
Such a Canadian thing to say. Yeah. No. Eh?
Exactly. And it's not spelled A-Y, it's A-H.
And in 5 years, I need to get rid of the in my, when I do stuff like this, how I put in every other sentence.
That's why we keep recording you, sending it to you, so you'll actually, but you have to watch it.
You think you have to do in years of public speaking, I wouldn't do that anymore.
I think we all do it. It's all good.
All right. With that, thank you so much, Chaplain, for joining us tonight. We appreciate everybody that is watching us live, and for those of you on the replay, and especially for those of you that are watching on Roku or listening to us on Spotify. We are everywhere, people. Everywhere. Check us out at Unstoppable Overcomers everywhere, and A Journey in Boots on Spotify. We actually I separated it. I separated it on Spotify.
Wow.
Yes. So A Journey in Boots, go check us out. Leave your 5-star review, folks. 5 stars, 5 stars. We would appreciate that. And see you same time, same channel next week. Bye for now.
Bye. Be well.